La Rochelle was an important German naval and U-boat base on the Atlantic coast, and after September 1944 was placed under siege by advancing Allied forces. Hitler ordered a series of Channel and Atlantic ports to hold out after the eventual fall of France to the Allies, and many did, being packed with shore batteries and plenty of troops and supplies. For example, the German garrison of La Rochelle numbered 22,000 men. From spring 1945, the French army, reconstituted earlier in the war by British and US military assistance, were charged with maintaining the siege of La Rochelle and the nearby Royan pocket. Though plans were formulated for the capture of La Rochelle, they were shelved due to the likely high casualties against such a formidable target, and the port remained in German hands until the general German surrender in May 1945. Royan was a different matter. The city was held by 3,500 German troops, and in April 1945, the French and US armies launched a joint assault, as the French command wanted to capture as many of these fortress harbours by force as possible. It was all a question of national prestige. The results were appalling. US carpet bombing of Royan completely destroyed the city, killing 1,500 civilians. 27,000 artillery shells added to the chaos, and napalm was also used one of its first times in World War II. With the capture of Royan in mid-April 1945, the French now decided to launch an invasion of the big island of Oloron. Once Oloron had been captured, the French were still contemplating a huge assault on La Rochelle itself. Oloron Island lies due west of Rochefort on France's Atlantic coast. It is 30 kilometers wide at its widest point and 18 kilometers long, and amounts to 174 square kilometers of land, and is metropolitan France's second largest island after Corsica. Occupied by the Germans since 1940, it was heavily fortified, as it was part of Hitler's famous Atlantic Wall defenses. Oloron Island was important because it allowed the Germans to monitor the Gironde estuary, where they could use their shore batteries to fire on any Allied ships attempting to use the great port of Bordeaux. Eliminating the German defensive batteries on Oloron was therefore a necessity. Planning actually began in autumn 1944 during the Normandy campaign, as the Allies swept south, and of course further Allied forces landed in southern France and moved north and east. But all plans were shelved due to other contingencies, and as such an operation called for a full-scale amphibious invasion, the island having 29 concrete blockhouses and bunkers, plus 42 further entrenchments and positions inland from the coast. The French Army's Commander-in-Chief, General Leclerc, had committed French forces to cooperation as part of the US 6th Army Group in advancing through Alsace and Lorraine into southern Germany. His view was that La Rochelle, Royan and Oloron would inevitably wither on the vine. But General de Gaulle, the French political leader, wanted all French territory liberated by French force of arms, rather than meekly awaiting a final German surrender. It was all a matter of national prestige, after so much of France had already been liberated by British, Canadian, American and Polish troops since the June 1944 D-Day landings. The German garrison of Oloron consisted of around 2,000 troops and 180 artillery guns of various calibers, all movable pieces having been redeployed from the west to the east coast to confront any landings from the French mainland by the Allies. The possible landing area was very well defended, perhaps as bad as the D-Day beaches, and sown with 30,000 landmines. The French command settled on Pont de Gatzeau for the landing, lying just 4 kilometers from the mainland. Between the 22nd and 29th of April 1945, the amphibious invasion was prepared. Bear in mind what was happening elsewhere at this time. Soviet forces had surrounded and fought their way into central Berlin by the 29th of April, with Red Army troops barely a kilometer from Hitler's bunker. The war in Europe was almost over, with just over a week left to run. On the 27th of April, the French resistance unit on Oloron was ordered to prevent the destruction of the port of Bouillardville, which had been rigged by the Germans with sea mines. This they achieved with the assistance of a turncoat German sergeant who was in charge of security. At the same time, a force of US landing craft and motorboats were prepared, loaded with tanks, trucks, jeeps, and 6,000 men, who prepared to assault Oleron in waves. The Germans knew something was coming and continued to improve their defences. Bad weather delayed the landings until the 30th of April 1945. The initial landings consisted of West Group with the 50th Infantry Regiment, an engineer company, and 75 American trucks in support. Their task was to capture a bridgehead at the extreme south of the island, clear paths through the minefields, and then advance on the line Dehu, Saint-Pierre, Chéret, Saint-Denis. East Group, consisting of the 158th Infantry Regiment, an engineer company, and 75 artillery guns, would land behind West Group and then proceed along the line Saint-Trojan, Pont-de-Or, and Le Château. Finally, a French commando force would land on the west coast to confuse the Germans advancing from their rear, dividing their attention. As the assault craft crossed, the landing area was brought under intense artillery fire from the mainland and from a French heavy cruiser, which battered German positions mercilessly. Soon after, the resistance began cutting German communication wires and sabotaging whatever they could to create confusion in the German command and control system. The first French troops stormed ashore at 6:02 a.m., and no German artillery interfered with the landing due to German confusion as to where they would actually land. French troops were able to clear paths through the minefields and move off the beach. The French second wave was landed by mistake 600 meters further south, followed by a third and fourth wave coming ashore even further south. From 6:15 a.m., the French cleared the beach and started to fight inland. At Girondins, at 1 p.m., a stiff fight with defensive Germans resulted in a dozen German dead and over 40 wounded. By the end of the morning, 2,400 men and their equipment had been successfully landed. German resistance was light to non-existent. At 3 p.m., while French forces on Oleron reorganized themselves before pressing down their axes of advance, Hitler killed himself in his Berlin bunker. But as in Berlin, the German defense of Oleron continued, the garrison unaware that the Führer was dead. In the meantime, US bombers attacked German positions and minefields. The French 158th Infantry Regiment conducted a series of assaults on German blockhouses, beginning at 5:30 p.m. when it seized bunkers at Manson Point. The 158th then took a series of blockhouses at Le Vesusier before clearing Or and Le Château. By nightfall, the 158th had captured 125 Germans. The 50th Marine Infantry faced heavier combat, crossing minefields under German machine gun and mortar fire. By nightfall, it controlled Grand Village. However, at 8 p.m., the Germans mounted a local counterattack from Alençon towards Grand Village. The German Kampfgruppe consisted of around 200 men, along with mortars and two 75mm guns, pushing the French Marines back. Regrouping, the 50th Marine Infantry regained Petit Village in a grim hand-to-hand fight. The German command ordered its forces to concentrate in the north of the island, preparatory to making a larger counterattack to push the French off the island into the sea. The French command, aware of the German move, landed more reinforcements. At dawn on the 1st of May 1945, the 158th Infantry's 2nd Battalion assaulted on the axes Delu, Saint-Pierre, and the 3rd Battalion attacked Les Alandes to Boyardville. A battalion of North African tirailleurs, with a support group of Samoa tanks, attacked Delu la Dresserie. The three attacks catching the Germans off balance. By day's end, the French had achieved all their objectives, the Germans withdrawing, and they came under attack in the centre of the island by French commandos. At 6 p.m. on the 1st of May 1945, the Germans surrendered unconditionally, and the last pockets of disorganized resistance ended at 10 p.m. The Germans had lost some 300 men killed in the pointless fight for Oleron, while French losses amounted to 18 killed and 55 wounded. La Rochelle surrendered on the 8th of May 1945, the last day of the war in Europe, and the war in France finally came to an end after 5 bloody years.
La Rochelle suffered less obvious damage, but the welcome the people gave their own French soldiers was as joyful and enthusiastic as in every town relieved from German occupation. Prisoners are brought in and any collaborators. These corps, made secretly, are brought out of hiding to join the victory parade through the town.
Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.